So good evening. This is Darrell C. Saltz, Chairman of the East Lampeter Township Planning Commission. I believe initially we have the welcome message.
Hello and welcome to the East Lampeter Township public meeting. All participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. Due to the COVID-19 virus and Governor Wolf's orders limiting indoor gatherings, in-person attendance for this meeting is being limited to a maximum of 25 people who will be observing social distancing. Additionally, based upon the order of the Secretary of Health regarding face coverings, all participants in the public meeting room are required to wear a face covering unless they fit into one of the order's exceptions. When speaking, while maintaining social distance, participants may remove their face covering. Therefore, this meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the Township's YouTube channel. The Township is expecting to utilize this vehicle for all future public meetings during and after the COVID-19 crisis. Please continue to check the Township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the Township's website and will be posted on the front of the Township building. The Township will also be recording the meeting and making it available for viewing via the Township website and YouTube channel. While every effort will be made to ensure the live streaming and website are working, East Lampeter Township takes no responsibility for and cannot be held liable for the unavailability of live streaming in part or in full due to technical issues beyond its control. Live streams and recordings of all meetings remain the property of East Lampeter Township and are protected by copyright. Access to live streams and recordings of meetings is provided for personal and non-commercial use. Video, images, and audio must not be altered, reproduced, or republished without permission of East Lampeter Township. It is suggested that all participants on Zoom mute their microphone during the meeting until they wish to speak, make a motion, or vote. All votes will be taken by roll call so that they can be properly recorded. In order to accommodate public comments at this meeting, the Township will be accepting public comments in writing or via email. Instructions for the submission of public comments are available on the Township website. All those providing public comments will be required to provide their name and address in order for their comments to be read into the record. Inappropriate comments will not be read into the record. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the Township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Good evening. This is Darrell C. Saltz, Chairman of the East Lampeter Township Planning Commission. Also present via Zoom are Dan McEwen, Roger Rutt, Randy Patterson, and Sarah Ryder. And present in the Township office meeting room is Ralph Hutchinson, Township Manager, and Tara Hitchens, Assistant Township Manager. You can see, I guess those on the Zoom can see the other people present. And then, as I understand, there are approximately 26 people in the meeting room with Ralph and Tara. Can everybody hear? Great. With that, we'll start the meeting. First order of business is pledge allegiance to the flag. And there's a flag at the Township office behind Hutch. pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First order of business is the approval of the minutes of the March 9th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. I think Tara or Hutch, I think you have to unmute us.
I move their approval.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes of March 9th. All those in favor say aye, and also designate by raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We had 5 ayes for approval of the minutes. Next order of business is old business, none at this time. Under new business, we have Plan 2021-05, Lancaster Lincoln LLC 2246 Lincoln Highway East Land Development Plan. And I believe we have representatives for that plan, and they are.
Yes, good evening. My name is Chris Vanarchik with RGS Associates. With permission of the Planning Commission, I'd like to present our project that we have before you this evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
Okay, if no questions out of the start here, then what I'd like to do is, if I could do a screen share, I'd like to give some very brief background on the property, the project, where it's located, and then move into the proposed program for the project, and then move into where we are in terms of status of the preparation of the land development plan and the planning process. So I will go ahead and try to share my screen. So if everyone can see that.
Yes,
Okay.
I can. Yep.
All right. So the property in question is located right here. Again, the address is 2246 Lincoln Highway. You have Dutch Wonderland across the street. And if you're familiar with the main entrance into the Tanger outlets, that's located right here. So our property is about 0.53 acres, and the application was for a preliminary final land development plan. The property is located in the C3 Regional Commercial Zoning District in the township, and it is located, as you can see here, on the south side of Lincoln Highway. And what we're looking at is an effort to try to continue some of the redevelopment that has occurred along that corridor, along Route 30, including the streetscape plan and the multimodal path. I think if I could switch what I'm sharing. And share. Okay, hopefully you could see from our plan set that we had supplied, this would be the existing condition plan for the property. So now I'm zoomed in. You have Lincoln Highway East situated here, the property to the south, again, 0.53 acres. The existing condition is mostly a paved or impervious condition. There is an existing Pizza Hut that since has been closed on the property. And again, I mentioned that we're looking to do a redevelopment of the lot to a proposed condition that would be a restaurant that would replace it. If I switch over to the rendering, hopefully you can see that now. And this is basically a rendered layout plan that was within our plan application sheet. And what it's proposing is there's going to be essentially mostly a full demolition. There will be some parts of the existing structure that is retained, but for the most part, it's going to be replaced with a proposed building. The proposed building that you see on the plan is about 2,450 square feet, and it does include a drive-through for the restaurant. The prior building, if I recall correctly, was about 2,700 or so square feet. So this is a reduction in building size as far as the proposed condition of the site. We would keep the 2 access drives that I'm circling here. There's an access drive here and an access drive here. In the existing condition, they are full movements onto the state highway controlled by PennDOT. And as I'm sure you're aware, access management is very much a priority at PennDOT. So as part of this plan, very early on, we met with township staff. We talked about possibly how we can improve the movement throughout this small parcel. So what we're proposing is actually to restrict the driveways. You'd only have a one-way in on the west side of the site and then a one-way out on the east side of the site. So again, do not enter on this side and then just a one-way moving in on this side. So we felt that from a safety standpoint will increase the movements across the property. We're also looking at the connection on the west side here. You may remember there was a property, the address is 2232, which is the immediately adjoining property to the west. That was a redevelopment of an old restaurant as well. That is under construction today. And as part of that plan, the township has the initiative to try to connect some of these parcels off of Route 30. So that plan established that connection for future development that would occur on this property. So we're carrying that through as part of our application. The applicant has agreed to, in this location right here, connect into the property to the west. So that'll be an alignment up to what was set up on that prior plan to the west to allow that circulation between the properties off of Route 30. Other than that, again, you have one-way circulation through the property and out this way. We did run truck turning movements so we can make sure fire apparatus can get through there. We have provided the minimum parking per code for the use. And I think it's an important point to make in that the proposed condition actually ends up as a reduced impervious cover. So we actually end up reducing the amount of impervious cover compared to what's out there today. As far as public utilities for the project, public water is supplied by City of Lancaster, and public sewer would be supplied by the East Lampeter Township Sewer Authority. We submitted plans to both groups early on in the process. We already have received comments from both groups, very minor in nature. It's really about just the connection out at Route 30. We're utilizing as much as we can the existing infrastructure on the property for those connections. As far as drainage, the property for the most part drains towards Route 30. I did mention that our condition actually reduces the impervious coverage. So in a sense, we're reducing the amount of stormwater runoff. However, even though we're doing that, we are proposing obviously to collect the drainage across the property, and we will be then conveying it to a structure that will be positioned on site right about this location, where it is essentially a water quality structure that will serve to remove pollutants and clean the water before then ultimately it discharges from our property underground. That discharge will occur to the west to a pipe that was already set up on the adjoining property to receive our stormwater management. In fact, there was an easement in place to our property to receive stormwater, which we'll be utilizing. We also have been in touch with that landowner, and they've been working with us on that connection. The whole entire site is less than 1 acre, so we do not have an NPDES permit. However, we did submit an application to the Conservation District for ENS, and we actually did receive a review today. I think there were 4 comments that are very minor in nature, so we don't have any concerns with addressing those and getting that back into the Conservation District for approval. So that in a nutshell is the proposed program. If there aren't any questions, I can move into the modification request that we have as part of our application. Being a redevelopment and a very small property, you can imagine, we did require a few modifications to implement the plan, which again, in meeting with staff very early on in the process, we kind of anticipated that we would have a few. We did discuss those with staff. The township engineer's review letter does support or recommend granting all those modifications that are requested. So I'll stop there, and unless the Planning Commission doesn't have any questions, I'm happy to walk through those modifications or waivers.
Chris, I actually have a question for you.
Sure.
You mentioned in the beginning about complying with the streetscape, the Lincoln Highway streetscape plan. How, what are you doing to comply with that?
Sure, I will pull that up. We have a plan sheet within our set, which I have now up on the screen. I'll zoom into that a bit. So we show a 6-foot concrete path to be installed within 5 years of plan recording. This is very consistent with what was discussed on the property to the west. So we met with staff and discussed to make sure we would have that adequately represented on the plan. So we have the grass strip that was requested, as well as the walkway across the entire frontage of the property.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
Chris, you're showing the approximate location of the connection with the neighboring property there.
Yes.
If it does come through, then they wouldn't be able to access the drive-through, I guess, would they? Because they'd be have to come in, and if they were to, they would have to make a left against the oncoming traffic to go up around. So I guess they would not be able to access the drive-through. Is that correct?
Yeah, we felt that if someone was coming in from the western property, the idea is just to allow that circulation onto this site if for some reason they want to go from this parcel to this parcel. But we did not think making a left-hand turn towards traffic coming in off of 30 would be a good idea from a safety standpoint. So we did restrict it to just the one-way movement. So they would have to move to the right.
Right.
Chris, can you talk a little bit about the signage you're going to have, the proximity of the split between going to the parking and going to the drive-through is very close to the entrance. So where's the signage appearing to direct people?
It's a good question. I'm not so sure the applicant may offer some input on that, but that was a question that came up during our discussions with staff. I did bring a graphic to address that. So if I zoom in here a bit, there was some feedback that, a decision would need to be made. Is someone going to the drive-through or going to just circulate through the property? So we talked about pulling that curb line back here as I have depicted to broaden up that area and just open that up a bit. I mentioned earlier that we did run a truck turning template through there. It does have adequate circulation, even with the curb out here, but we thought by angling this curb line a bit, maybe we do that even more aggressively than shown here, would help direct someone into the flow of the parking lot and parking spaces, or they can make a decision to enter the drive-through lane. But typically, to answer your question, the signage for the drive-through, I believe their ordering stations are typically back here, and then they come around to the window here for the actual pickup. But I would imagine
Is there potential for a sign to go into the island there where you drew the new line?
Right, I think there is, yes. And unless, I don't know if the applicant would like to offer some input on that, but I don't think that's a problem. And I would imagine that the tenant, the operator, would actually want a sign out there to direct folks to that drive-through. But that's not a problem. I can make sure we look at that.
Yeah, you just want to be careful about the potential for stacking, to me, on Lincoln Highway for somebody trying to decide which way they need to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a good point. I'll offer to the Planning Commission, just for context. The ordinance, I believe, requires 100 feet of stacking for a drive-through. When you calculate the distance from a car sitting here around the back and along the side here, you end up with in excess of 150 feet. So yeah, we're doing pretty good.
I'm not concerned about that stacking. I'm concerned about somebody trying to decide coming off of Lincoln Highway which way they want to go if there's not proper signage.
Absolutely.
Chris, could I jump in here a second? I'm Erica. I'm with the Dreyer Group, the applicant. It is also a possibility, if it would help, we could put striping or painting markings on the asphalt. So it could say, like, maybe before the crosswalk there that goes across the drive-through, we could have it say drive-through, and we can have more painted directions on the actual asphalt, if that's helpful too.
I just think you need something there to direct folks.
Sure.
So with Chris, you mentioned, and that's a question I had relative to the drive-through. I didn't see an order kiosk or an order window, so I wasn't sure if you ordered and picked up your food at the same window near where the stop word is, or if there is an order kiosk.
Yeah, on the land development plan, we're not showing that. We can certainly add that. We have that architecture and information. If I recall, I believe the ordering station is back in here, and then the pickup would occur here, and the actual payment transaction.
That's correct, Chris.
Okay, because my concern there was some of Randy with the stacking into Lincoln Highway to Route 30, but then also where do we measure the 100 feet from? because quite often the stacking is at the order initially. And depending on the efficiency of the staff, at some of the places that we've gone during this last year for takeout services, it seems the stacking is more at the order window, and several places have put in a second order station and just one pickup window. So, and with that, I mean, for the drive-through lane, when you come past the building to the back corner, is there any curbing or separation between the lane that goes around the building in the back and the drive-through? Or could somebody miss the drive-through lane when they come in and don't do the left, but go straight and attempt to merge into the order station?
If I understand your question, in this location here, this is a painted line to delineate the difference between the drive-through lane and bypass traffic. So you have the ability to have bypass traffic all the way around. I think also your question, if someone wanted to dive in here,
Yes.
I suppose they could if no one else was in line. But yeah, I mean, from a maintenance standpoint, snow removal and so forth, we've delineated with the concrete pad as your drive-through lane and a painted stripe line versus the asphalt or pavement.
Okay.
And Chris, if I could jump in here, this is David Herbert with the Dreyer Group. Want to just talk about two things with respect to your question about people cutting in. I would take that painted line that you're showing, Chris, to the bottom there and extend it all the way to the grass island to the left,
Okay.
just to delineate that there is no opportunity for someone to break in should they make that decision. Exactly. And then going back to the order board and the pickup lane and the pickup window, there are typically 3 cars between the pickup window and the order board. And if you look at that dimension on the bottom there, I think it says 5 feet. Sorry, I can't read that. It's not zoomed in. Right there. The order board will be in that area approximately, a little bit further to the right. So so the stacking then from the order board would start right about where it says ramp C, just in front of that, to the left. So then you would have your 3 cars between that order board and the pickup window, which is the extension there further up the page in the middle. So I hope that was a little clarification of your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, the concern was, and I think, if you miss the drive-through lane, there's no circulation other than back out to the Lincoln Highway, a
Correct.
left and a left to attempt the maneuver back into the drive-through lane. And we all know what it's like to do left on Lincoln Highway. Yeah. You may go right and go down to the light and come back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know the history of Popeyes, but Chick-fil-A, yeah, all hours of the day, they have like 2 lanes coming in and they're backed up. Yeah, it doesn't matter what time of the day, it seems. They almost don't need any inside restaurant facilities for parking. I don't know what the history is for Popeyes. Are you more of a sit down or you drive through?
I don't know if Dreyer would like to
Yeah,
address that.
this is David again. I can speak to that. In these days of COVID, of course, more people are probably apt now to use the drive-through than ever before. So certainly that is something that people have adopted. Who knows, once it's over and we're back to whatever normal means, that they will go inside. But I would say as a comparison to Chick-fil-A, Popeyes would actually aspire to be as popular as the Chick-fil-A drive-through lane. So in my experience at the moment, at least, it would not appear to me that the congestion that you're used to seeing at a Chick-fil-A would be the same here at the Popeyes, and that probably more people would come in at the Popeyes than in the Chick-fil-A scenario. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was that busy, where you have the handicap parking and everything, where there would be better to have like a 2-lane drive-through coming through there. But then at the back would be kind of narrow, so I don't know how you would accommodate that, but.
Right.
Yeah, we wanted to keep the pass by there going around for people who, again, just did not want to go through the drive-through. Correct.
It was a challenging site given the size.
Yeah.
And, again, I think we have about 33% more distance than required by the ordinance. Hopefully we feel that that would be sufficient based on the user in terms of stacking distance.
We do have a review letter from Dave Miller and Associates dated March 16th. As you mentioned, Chris, there are 7 waiver requests. First one being for preliminary plan, and that was recommended to be granted. Second item is for plan scale, and the scale is 10 feet. And given the size of the site, as you said, about a half an acre, gives more detail for this small site and the amount of information.
Right.
Third was for the cartway edge on the street. The radius on the intersections. And that was recommended for the 3 different radii that are there for the 11, 13, and 20 that are existing.
Mm-hmm.
For sidewalks, Chris, you had asked for a waiver on the 5-foot sidewalk where the 3 parking spaces are, including one being a handicapped. And that's recommended for approval. And later in the subdivision land development comments, item 8, it was mentioned about the 5-foot sidewalk that parallels that's along the building, or
4 foot.
4 foot, excuse me, 4 foot. Is that all existing?
No, that's a proposed sidewalk. I had the opportunity to talk with Scott Hain, the township engineer, following his letter when he produced that letter. And what he and I spoke through is that we believe that the modification would not apply here because the modification is written in the case where you have a perpendicular parking space into a sidewalk, and it's designed for the overhang of a car. In this case, you only have cars running parallel. You do not have a car perpendicular. So after Scott and I talked that through, he agreed. He said, that's fine. He does not think that applies and we can respond accordingly.
Okay, that was kind of a unique situation, yeah, where previously there was parking right up there with the Pizza Hut, but now it's, yeah, wider. With your parking spaces, and you noted in your request that in addition to the 5 feet, I guess your curbs are 7 inches. So you
Right.
have, in a sense, you have 6 feet in width. The
Correct.
cars still tend to pull up and use the curb as a wheel stop. Now, the handicap space, your spaces you show here is 18 feet. You do have the sign for the handicap spot in this parking, so that'll keep a car from extending well over the curb. As you said, that's really what that is. I don't know if there'd be any value to, and it's only 2 cars. I think you're right. I'm torn between whether you need a wheel stop there, but then that becomes an issue too of tripping.
Right.
But
Right. Yeah, with the 5-foot dimension we show there, when you add the 2 curbs, the horizontal distance of those 2 curbs, you actually end up with 6 feet 2 inches.
mhm. Yeah, and for those 2 spaces, it's just, it's not going to be a high speed. It's just my concern. And you can see how that works. If they pull over, you may only have 3 feet of sidewalk left, and the people will be walking towards Lincoln Highway if they're going to go into the building, because your entrances are on the front of the building and the east side. Is that correct? Or there's no,
Entrance here and an entrance here, and there's an exit here, employee entrance.
yeah,
And I think in terms of the location of that parking space and this walk, if this walk continued to the south for quite a distance and you had a collection of people who were using this as like a throughway, I think you'd see obviously more pedestrian traffic. My thought is if whoever parks here, there isn't any more sidewalk over here. So they're kind of putting that situation on themselves if they park too close to the curb.
Yeah.
Versus anybody else. And I think also, just my opinion, I think what we have found is that type of requirement is a bit antiquated. When cars tended to have much longer overhangs, the older vehicles, modern cars today just have very short overhangs. Not to say that there aren't cars out there. I mean, let's face it,
Yes.
a pickup truck, if a pickup truck backs in there, they tend to have a long overhang. So it is possible. But we felt that since it's not a sidewalk that extends for any great length beyond those particular spaces, the likelihood that it would be a problem is very low.
Mhm. Okay. And I've seen in some cases that there's actually a physical barrier, since there's no entrance on that west side of the building, somebody's not going to come running out of there and right into the travel lane for the window for your, but that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Just the concern that kids
Sure.
and not being seen easily coming between cars and over, and somebody trying to figure out where they're going. So, okay. And then the other three items were stormwater issues, and for items 5, 6, and 7 under the waiver request, and the recommendation was also to grant those. And under general comments, we discussed that a little bit about the access between the adjoining property.
Mhm.
And as I understand, there's potential for some discussion of other potential connections that to the rear of the property, but those may be challenging with the adjoining landowners.
Mhm.
So uh, under zoning, then there were 5 comments. Do you have any issue in coming in compliance with those?
No, I do not. No, like I said, we've gone through the letter. I had a productive conversation with the township engineer, and we have direction on how to satisfy and address those comments.
Okay. And under stormwater management were 18 comments.
Yep. Yeah, many of those are looking for clarification, some notes, much of it's notation, and some of the administrative comments related to the operation and maintenance for the future of the property, the O&M.
And then we also have a review letter from Lancaster County
Yes.
dated March 12th. And that there were 3 comments. Landscaping should be installed along the front of the building to replace the shrubs that will be removed. So do you have a landscape plan?
The applicant, as part of their, I'll call it landscape package with Popeyes, will be putting in landscaping. I had a conversation about this with the township engineer as well. They made a comment in their review about a section reference for a landscape plan. It basically just says there should be plantings on the property. However, it does not quantify or require certain species or types of landscaping. They compared it to the plan that was next door to the west, the 2232. And I explained to him that that was actually a shopping center, which had its own specific requirements for landscaping, such as interior islands and so forth. So we did not find anything in the ordinance that specifically requires a certain quantity or type of landscaping. However, that being said, again, the applicant intends to put in landscaping. Obviously they want to, have an attractive site on the property. So anything that's not impervious will have a ground cover and landscaping of some type.
Yeah. Well, just there is the Lincoln Highway streetscape plan. So I just ask if you coordinate Popeye's proposal with what's in that landscape, the streetscape plan and the landscaping for that. So that the Lincoln Highway becomes totally attractive, and that we don't have things, inconsistent with the rest of the properties. It doesn't have to be identical, obviously, but,
Sure.
and individual identity is fine, but there are some recommendations in the good would be worthwhile reviewing.
Sure.
And the final comment is just about the review certification for the county planning department
Right.
being added. So,
Yep, that's not a problem. We can look at that streetscape plan and make sure that's incorporated.
okay.
What kind of signage do you have on the property, Chris? Is there something out front there or on the building, or how is it to designate your property there?
There's an existing sign here. It's noted right now in the plan as existing Pizza Hut sign. So we intend to just keep that in place. We don't plan to change it or move it.
Okay. Is Farah, is that sign there in keeping with our existing ordinances, or is it from previous
Yeah, and
standards?
it's a pre-existing sign. If they change only the panels on each side of the sign, it can remain.
Yeah, what would be the size of the sign today if under today's requirements? And just as it,
They'd be allowed 80 square feet.
and what is this one?
I do not know that off the top of my head, Dan.
Okay. Okay. I was just wondering, it'd be part of the landscape, Route 30, Greenway or whatever it's called. We like to keep the signage in line with everybody else. Would the Popeyes be, willing to come into compliance with today's standards?
I think the intent is to utilize the existing sign.
Yeah, I realize that that was your intent, but I was wondering, would you consider using a new sign that would be more in line with today's ordinance?
Yeah, I guess we can explore it. I'm trying to think about the size out there. I mean, I know when we did our site investigation, that sign, if I had to guess, might be 8 feet wide and 10 or 12 feet high. So it's probably pretty close to that 80-foot size of today. But again, I think, at this point, we would just utilize the existing sign there. So I don't think there's interest in changing that out, particularly given the size of it, in comparison to what's in the new ordinances today.
My only other concern would be stacking it. And like I say, I don't have experience with Popeyes, but if traffic coming down Route 30 heading east, and they want to come in there, and I know it looks like you have a long place there for the drive-through, but if Chick-fil-A, man, they back up for a long way, 2 lanes. And I don't know what the history is with Popeyes and what the future will be. And hopefully you've looked into that. My concern is that we back traffic up on the 30s. Somehow people just stop there.
Sure. Yeah, I think like mentioned earlier, it sounds fantastic. I think Popeyes would love to say that they will have that kind of traffic. But again, I think Chick-fil-A, in my experience, and some of the projects we've been involved in, that is a unique restaurant. And for some reason, it is extremely busy. But, just in my experience in talking around the county and the Popeyes that exists along, what is that, Manheim Pike, I believe. I have not heard problems with that backing out. It's popular, but it's not a Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A is a unique situation for sure.
I just have one comment about your landscaping plan as you looked at that. In the far, I guess, northeast corner, where your first parking space is, the other side, I guess, southeast corner then. At the entrance, the entrance into the site,
Over here.
that first parking space is very close to the entrance again. So I wouldn't plant anything there that has height to it.
Sure.
so
Low
that
ground
someone
cover.
can see somebody backing out of that space.
No, that's a good thought. I agree.
Your
Yeah,
insurance
if I recall,
company will
Chris, I think there was a
probably-
comment about adding the clear sight triangles.
Yeah,
So probably first step is putting the clear sight triangles in to follow Randy's to know the area that's to remain unobstructed visually, especially for the exit side. But on the entrance, and that's a good point, Randy, that those people backing out may not see somebody coming in.
And I was able to look back at the zoning hearing board application. The sign that exists out there is 6 feet by 10 feet, so it's 60 square feet. It's well within the parameters of the ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, good. Just my question. Fine, great.
Thank you, Tara. Are there any comments from general public or any individuals that are in the meeting room? Or any email or written comments, Tara?
No email. No one's raising their hand in here.
Okay. And I assume no individuals that are zoomed in either. Any other comments from the Planning Commission? Just one final thought, and then I think we're looking for a motion as commissions are preparing their thoughts on a motion. Wish you much success. And just a thought with the your order window, your order station. I've seen some places where they have them one behind the other. So if you become successful in a second order window would be helpful. The position of this one might be important too, and potentially allow space to add a second one. If you have the ability to have a double order station, and then not having to move that one in the future, if you do very well, that it would be helpful to have one,
Sure.
if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So just in your final location of this one, take a peek at that, I'd say, so from a practical standpoint. And obviously the other for Chris and others is, I don't know if you ever had that in any other of your facilities, or if that makes sense. And even to run the utilities underground for it, which would make it easy to connect if there was a need for it. But just a final thought.
Sure.
So if there's no other comments, I'll look for a motion.
I'll move that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors the approval of project number 2021-5 for 2246 Lincoln Highway East, presented by Lancaster Lincoln LLC, to include the approval of waivers to preliminary plan, to scale, to minimum radius, to sidewalk width, as well as the 3 waivers requested related to stormwater, recognizing that the comments in both general zoning, subdivision, land development, stormwater management, and those presented by the Lancaster County Planning Commission related to landscaping and notations be complied with.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
And the second by Roger. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? None. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your
Chris.
time.
Thank you, applicant, for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
The next item on the agenda is Plan 2021-06, 679 Hartman Station Road Land Development Plan. We did have a request from the applicant consultant to table this for this evening's meeting. And believe they're looking to come in next month. So I would assume that they would work on the comments in the letter from our engineer and hopefully address some of those and clean them up. We might have a new review letter till next month. So at the request of the applicant, I'll make a motion that project number 2021-06 Lloyd Miller 679 Hartman Station Road Land Development Plan be tabled until next month. Also, as part of that motion, if the project is not reviewed within the required time frame, I would recommend that the project be denied unless a time extension, if required, is submitted to the Board of Supervisors prior to the expiration. So
Second.
with that as a motion, I'd look for a second.
Second.
I have a second from Randy. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, say aye.
All right,
Raise your hand. Thank you. So moved. Next item on the agenda is the Plan 2021-09 conditional use application for 2601 Lincoln Highway East. So this conditional use application is scheduled for a hearing with the Board of Supervisors on April 19th, 2021 at 5:30. As part of the conditional use process, there is to be a review by the Planning Commission. So they're here this evening for a review with the Planning Commission for us to give our comments and recommendations on their conditional use request. And given such that it's a conditional use application, any responses will be the 5 members of the Planning Commission. Staff and supervisors will make their comments at the conditional use hearing. So the 5 of us will be the ones that'll be entertaining any questions or information that's presented. So with that, we have representative for the application.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Matt Cream. I'm a partner with the law firm of Nicholas and Cohenottle, and I am representing the applicant in the conditional use application. With me tonight is Ben King. He is the principal in the LLC that is the applicant and has an agreement to purchase the property conditioned on the outcome of the land planning processes here in the township. Members of the Planning Commission, also with us this evening is Jake Krieger of RGS Associates, and excuse me, and he will be presenting details of the proposed plan under consideration for conditional use approval. We're here with an application under the Historic Resource Overlay District. we presented to you some detailed information that addresses the historic resource status of the structures on the property. Okay. Members of the board, can you hear me?
Yes.
At first it was difficult. It's better now. I don't know if the mic could be raised or,
We're gonna raise this
Pick
up.
up.
yeah.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Is this better?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, so Ben and Jake, I think I have a habit to move. I'm going to fight that, and I recommend it to you as well, that we'll talk into the mic and the camera is directly in that direction. Members of the Planning Commission, I was saying that we are here with an application for conditional use approval under the Historic Resource Overlay District. We presented to you some detailed information about the historic resource status of the structures on the property, and consistent with the definitions in the township zoning ordinance, the fact that the property itself is a historic resource. That recognition dates back to at least 2006 with the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. And we'll get into more details on that as you may direct us. The application is for the reuse of the historic farmstead. In a sense, this is not about developing the property or even redeveloping the property. It is about repurposing the developed portion of the property. And I would ask Ben to approach and speak about the vision and also about his business, which he is proposing to relocate to the property, which is in fact a construction company that restores historic barns, among other things. Ben, thank you.
Well, since I can't hold myself still, I'll just see if I can take this off. Good evening, everybody. I'm Ben King, CEO and principal at the Quarry View Building Group. And just want to thank everybody for being here. I think we'd all probably enjoy being outside or at home with families versus being here at a meeting. But anyway, here we are. I know there's been a lot of interest in the Joseph Espenshade family, the farm near 2601 Lincoln Highway. And as a long-term resident here of the township, I've driven past here for years and wonder why it's in disrepair and vacant for, I think now 14 years or close. I think it's pretty simple. Really comes down to it's 5 acres in the wrong place to farm. And the house and barn are too close to the road. So the noise alone probably most of you farmers probably wouldn't appreciate too much. I don't think I would. Not to mention the fact that if animals escape from the barn, they'll probably be turned into hamburger within minutes. So we're just 5 acres in the wrong place. We've talked to a lot of people about the property, including renowned architect Greg Scott, who's on today, I think, and barn expert, published author and barn expert Greg Huber, the Historic Preservation Trust of Lancaster County, and also some descendants of the Joseph Espenshade family. I know we have David here tonight. And so with all those conversations, really just concluded at the end that it's pretty unlikely that this property would be used again for agricultural purposes, at least the buildings. So I think that leaves us with 2 choices. We can either just leave the property be and vanish. And I know there's a lot of other properties in the township in similar scenarios, dilemmas. So can either just let it be and see a lot of these old barns and homes vanish, or perhaps be creative with repurposing the buildings instead. So we're proposing a very simple plan to restore all the buildings, the original buildings, and leave the tillable acres untouched, as Matt had mentioned. Our company, Quarry View Building Group, is a general contracting business. And we primarily do business in the Mid-Atlantic region. We do barn restorations, barn movings, and build some new custom barns and home using the old style mortise and tenon joinery technique, as well as more traditional methods. So the bulk of our work happens in the office, in selling, planning, design, and so on. About 80% of the construction work is done by subcontractors. So, which really means we have minimal large equipment. A lot of the work is done by subcontractors. So the bulk of the work really takes place in the office, which would be in the house. So the reason for the recreation of the tobacco shed, which you'll see here in a minute, is because the geometry of the barn does not allow for the use of high bay doors, which are needed for some of the vehicles that we have. So really, to summarize, this is going to be, we're proposing a pretty spectacular showpiece for us and our customers, the community, tourists, the township, instead of seeing it like it is currently. And I think it'll be a win for everybody. So we look forward to working with the community, the township, to make this happen.
Good evening, Jake Krieger from RGS Associates. I'm just going to briefly review some of the plan requirements and walk you through the plan. So what you see on the screen here is the aerial view of what exists on site. Again, the site location is 2601 Lincoln Street, just west of the intersection with 896. Currently what exists is the farm homes, which are kind of in the center of the site. They're kind of clustered around by trees, the barn, and then some other smaller farm buildings. This will be proposed under the as a historic resource overlay use. And the plan proposes, if you could move to the next plan view for me. The plan proposes renovation of the existing house and barn. The house is two buildings in the kind of center portion, and the barn is the larger building on the far right. These will both be renovated, and then a small addition will be connecting the homes that will be over some patio and deck space. And then additionally, accessory parking and the accessory building will be proposed along with this. And again, the accessory building is what we refer to as the tobacco barn, and that will be for parking trailers and trucks for the company. Parking calculations, they're a combination of office square footage and employees on the site for a total of 13 spaces, and we have those spaces to meet that requirement. The driveway location is where the existing driveway is located now. It'll be the surface will be improved, and the driveway width will be slightly large. It'll be formed into a 24-foot wide drive aisle, which will accommodate two-way traffic in and out. The overall building coverage for the site has been reduced with this with the plan, approximately 2,000 square feet. And then the overall impervious actually remains the same on the site. So the plan overall, the improvements meet setbacks and other dimensional requirements of the ordinance. Thank you.
So, members of the Planning Commission, the considerations that go into a decision by the supervisors and then, of course, recommendations by you are contained in the Historic Resource Overlay District provisions of the zoning ordinance. And in general, they are these. Is the proposed reuse of the farmstead on this property a reuse that would permit the preservation, restoration, and rehabilitation of the historic resources on the property, which again include not only the building, but the property itself. And because the application is made under other uses not specified in this overlay district, a determination of whether the proposed use is compatible with the surrounding area and would enable the preservation, restoration, and rehabilitation of the property. The nearest properties to this property, all of which front on Lincoln Highway East, are for the most part not in an agricultural use. The agricultural uses, particularly within the Mill Creek Tributary Rural Historic District, are to the rear of this property and extend for quite a distance in that direction. So to some extent, this property, which as Ben has described, and which I'm guessing because of its prominence along the road, is in significant disrepair, is really the property that you see if you're driving along Lincoln Highway East with the intention of viewing this rural historic district. So in a sense, it is a gateway property to the historic district, which is recognized by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Historical and Historical and Museum Commission. The additional consideration is whether, after the restoration and a renovation work is done, whether these historic resources will remain a historic resource. And we have the opinion of the Lancaster Historic Trust, and that has reviewed the work and the action by the board of directors of the Historic Trust, that these resources are both existing historic resources and will remain historic resources. As Jake described, there will be some reduction in building space, which will remove some of the add-ons to the barn particularly, which do not add to, and in fact, in the opinion of the expert reviewers, detract from the historic depiction of this barn at the time of its construction, without increasing the existing impervious surfaces within the farmstead. The proposed new construction, which is designed to look like a historic building, a tobacco shed, is for purposes of accessory parking. There is no requirement in the ordinance that parking be undercover or to some extent camouflaged, but it is the choice that Ben is making so that his construction vehicles and trailers will be undercover when on the property, so that anyone viewing the property will see the historic farmstead buildings with this new reproduction of a historic farmstead building, and perhaps some passenger vehicles. We're good? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. A couple of considerations, members of the Planning Commission, in considering the finding that the supervisors need to make, which is that it is a use compatible with the surrounding area. We suggest to you, and we'll suggest to the supervisors, that that needs to take into account both the actual uses that are near this property in existence today and the potential uses of this property, both under the Historic Resource Overlay District requirements and under the underlying agricultural zoning district requirements. These buildings may be demolished. The ordinance permits it, subject to the appropriate procedures. So there is no requirement that anybody use or reuse these buildings. And that is reflected in the permitted uses of the agricultural zoning district, which include heavy equipment sales with the proviso that they support agricultural operations, but that proviso doesn't make them any lighter or any smaller. So they are heavy equipment sales. Houses of worship, K through 12 schools, a solar field or a wind farm as principal uses. All are permitted either as permitted uses or by special exception or conditional use on the property, each of which would result in a substantial reduction or elimination of the active agriculture that occurs on the property currently, which will not be disturbed or made any smaller by this proposed reuse of the farmstead for, as Ben said, essentially business office use with the indoor parking of construction vehicles. Under the Historic Resource Overlay District, permitted uses include office for administrative, business, executive, professional, and government uses, so that Ben's proposed use of the residence is a permitted use in the Historic Overlay District. It is the additional use of the barn for storage of construction related or items related to the construction business that brings us into the other uses. But again, the permitted uses in the Historic Overlay District include places of worship, restaurants without drive-through services, but nevertheless restaurants, retail sales without drive-through services, townhouses and multifamily dwellings, all of which we suggest to you would be more intensive uses with far greater traffic and parking needs than this business office construction business use. So members of the Planning Commission, with that, I would ask if the members have any questions for me, Jake, or Ben.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I'll maybe start. You referenced letters and we got copies of those, I guess the township late yesterday. I got them today in reference to the State Historic Preservation Office and their review and indication that this was part of the Mill Creek Tributary Rural Historic District. And in their opinion, the farm is therefore considered a historic resource as defined by NPS, the National Park Service, and who also manages the National Register. then you have the letter from, we also have a second one from the Historic Preservation Trust. Has this ever been put on the state or national register? Or is it still at the point of being determined eligible for it? Or is it actually on the register anywhere?
It is eligible, but it has not been placed on the register.
Okay, thank you. Was it Jake mentioned that some buildings will be removed? What percentage of the existing buildings? You mentioned the tobacco barn, and I think the structures behind the farmhouse, some of those are being removed. What percentage of the existing buildings are being removed? And from the history that was provided, the farmhouse is kind of a late, well, not kind of, is a late 19th century, and there's been modifications, revisions, additions to that. And then the barn is the early 20th century. I think it was 1911 that the barn was built. But some of the structures, and just from the visual that you provided of some of it, and indicated, do you know what percentage of the existing structures will be removed?
It's roughly 2,000 square feet. It's about 17,000 existing square feet of building on the site. And then roughly 2,000 is being removed.
Members of the Planning Commission, if you can see this board.
Okay.
Okay, it's this building.
Hold on 1 second.
Oh, we lost it, yeah.
Yes.
I was going to ask perhaps an easier question is which buildings will remain and be restored? Just the barn and the house, I believe, or the.
Okay, so what was that question again? So
Well,
everything you see on the, can you see that picture okay?
Yes, I can.
The drawing.
All the, oh,
We lost it.
We lost it again.
It looks like to me that the buildings on the barn side to be taken down are the block garage, the 1980 barn addition, and there's something in the front which I can't read that looks like it's being taken out, but the 1911 barn stays. And there's behind the existing dwelling, there's a block building, I guess, being removed. Is that correct? And then the buildings between the existing farmhouse and the existing dwelling, I guess, are being removed and then putting in a new a connection there.
yeah. So the picture you're seeing right now is from the 50s. There's still some of the old chicken house is still there. And then on the next picture, you'll see there was a bunch of additions put on the front of the barn. And there's the old tobacco barn that used to be out by the road. Yes, the tobacco barn is no longer there. So at the top picture, all the additions on the front of the barn and the small garage, that's all being taken off.
Okay.
And then on the house stays except for the little wash house will be removed, and we'll build our new connector piece between the two houses. The yellow house was used as the in-laws quarters.
Okay.
So the tobacco barn in the back there is a recreation, should be a new building, but it's a recreation of what used to be out by the highway. So what Jake had said is there's a net decrease of building footprint when you take away all the additions on the front and remove the garage. There's, even with the recreation of the tobacco shed, there's still a net decrease of building footprint.
Okay.
Now, the usage of the existing farmhouse is going to be your office. The dwelling is also going to be office space, or what's?
Yeah, so the brick house and what in the rendering is shown as the gray siding, that's on the previous picture, that was the yellow house, the in-laws. So in the rendering, you're seeing the two connected, the connector piece being new. The brick house is just being restored, and then the in-laws quarters, new siding, roofing, and new interior finish.
In the agricultural area to the east or the west of the property, is going to be what, farmed by another farmer or something? You're going to rent that out? Is that what it is? Or?
Yeah, that would remain in tillable land.
I have one question. So you mentioned that this has been vacant for 15 years. So why, and I think you kind of already alluded to this, but why has it not been, purchased and used in the last 15 years? It's just a difficult site, or is there any other reason?
I did grow up on a farm, so I have a little bit of experience with that, but I think, and probably most of the farmers in the room would probably be able to speak to this better, but I think it's just 5 acres in the wrong place for farming. And, the previous proposed business uses on the property had been rejected. So there was previous attempts to do stuff here. It just hadn't gone anywhere.
The current owner of the property took it through 2 processes with the township, both of which were denied approval. The one was to rezone it from agricultural zoning to another designation, and the second was to build a hotel on the property, and both of those were denied approval by the township. The property has been for sale more or less since then.
And can you speak a little bit to the construction equipment side of the operation and what that entails and what the traffic of that use is on the site?
Yeah, I can do that. So I think I mentioned in the opening statements that we're a general contracting business. So we're relatively light on the construction equipment compared to what you would normally see with a business our size that self-performs everything. So our primary equipment is going to be vehicles, trucks, trailers, mostly pickup trucks, trailers, and smaller pieces of equipment, some forklifts, all-terrain handlers, things of that nature. The barn, the 1911 barn, primarily be used for material storage, and the tobacco barn, or the recreated tobacco barn, would be where we are getting the high bay doors for the larger trucks. The geometry of the barn does not lend itself to having high bay doors in it. So yeah, I don't know if you heard that question, but Matt's asking how many vehicles, what time of day.
Mhm.
Our vision for this is to have basically restored and a showpiece for our business. So one aspect of this includes bringing customers in to see our work and so on. That is going to be pretty minimal. We have roughly 30 to 40 projects a year. So that's very, very, very light traffic. So the bulk of the traffic will happen mornings and evenings as workers come and go. We have a dozen or so people working in the office that would stay there during the day. So we're talking, from a truck traffic standpoint, for maybe half a dozen vehicles in and out with that. And then the others would be just personal vehicles that our office staff is bringing in.
The reason I asked the question, it's more about storing interior versus exterior of that construction equipment. So your intention is to store that material, those vehicles within the structures, as opposed to having them sit outside.
That is correct.
Okay.
Well, the visuals that you've provided, appear to be an improvement to the site. And as indicated, it's been roughly 15 years since anything's done there. It appears that the improvements that are being done are changing the character of the site, in my opinion. And it's appears to not be an actual restoration from a historical perspective. And in some respects, I don't even know if it could be said sympathetic, would be an improvement to the site for a construction business, which is, I believe, what Quarry View Building Group is. I'm having a understanding how that fits in as an agricultural support business. The information you had in the packet, the Quarry View Building Group builds buildings. You included some agricultural buildings, some equestrian, but it appears there's more commercial buildings, residential buildings, event venues, specialties. You had, I think, a pet resort. I think there was mention of breweries that you've done as specialty. So I'm trying to understand how this fits into the agricultural aspect.
So, Mr. Chairman, first of all, it's incorrect that this is not an authentic historic restoration. That's why the applicant has hired architects, and that's why it has gone through the reviews, particularly by the Historic Preservation Trust. If you were to refer to that letter, the consultant for the trust has reviewed what is being proposed for the reconstruction, both methods and materials, and gives the opinion that the structures and the property would be remaining historic resources. Secondly, there's no requirement that the use put into the property be an agricultural support use or that it be agriculture. The agricultural zoning district permits a myriad of uses that are not agricultural in nature: schools, houses of worship, government offices, solar fields, wind farms. The purpose of the historic overlay district is to enable the restoration and preservation of the historic resources. There's no requirement that they be used for agricultural purposes or that they remain in agricultural uses. Now, this property will remain in the current agricultural use, which is, albeit limited, but nevertheless real, several acres of field crops. And as permitted under the ordinance, the structures will be reused in a way that allows for their preservation, restoration, and survival. So I'm afraid both of your premises are incorrect.
Daryl, I guess I would say that I do believe it is a restoration. The fact that they are restoring the barn and the two primary residential structures and removing add-ons, the basic barn and residence that were built on the original farmstead are being preserved and restored. I would agree with Mr. Cream about the letters that were provided both by the state and the Historic Preservation Trust. And it's not so much just about the structures as much as it is about their purpose in the district as a whole. So I think I would disagree with you about the restoration side in particular.
I just like to add that sometimes we get lost in the purity of historical restoration and lose sight that it may not be economically feasible to do it in the pure sense. And this is an option where I think the best of both worlds. You're doing what you can to preserve, but yet it's being a viable business at the same time. And that property is definitely not going to make it as an agricultural property anymore under today's agricultural needs. And I think it would continue to deteriorate over time if something isn't done relatively soon. So for the most part, I think this is a good project. I haven't had a chance.
Dan,
Just froze.
you're frozen, Dan. We can't hear you. Can you hear us? Your image and audio is gone.
While we're waiting for Dan to unfreeze, I think, I mean, my perspective on the project, I do think it's a good use. I think in terms of approvals, the only thing I would probably seek from the supervisors is a condition that construction equipment remain stored inside structures as opposed to being stored outside. I think that lends itself to the site as an agricultural use as part of history. Keeping the barn and the newly constructed tobacco barn and the houses. I think if you begin to store materials and store equipment outside, then it changes the perspective of that viewpoint that Mr. Cream mentioned at the very beginning of this kind of being the entryway into the Mill Creek historical area.
That would be an acceptable condition. Again, the goal here is not only restoring and preserving the structures, but the property itself. So that this is the Lincoln Highway. So anybody passing it at speed, the intention is will perceive it as a very good looking farmstead. And that's the goal.
So I would like to add my thoughts. I think this is a very viable project. I think locations like this, it's going to take people with vision like Ben has to bring it back. The challenge in preservation is always economic. I mean, you can go around the county and the country, you see these big, large stone houses that are just wasting away because the economics, the heating costs and all that is just the remodeling costs are just too high. So when we, as a township, look at Lincoln Highway, landscape, things like this, I mean, we had a good project with the Popeyes. This is another good project. I mean, the value of a landscape project along the Lincoln Highway is to have properties that look like they're being used and active. So, you know, as we fill in along the landscape of Lincoln Highway, this is a good project. I like this.
And Roger, I mean, I looked at the history of the other applications compared to the other uses that had been identified in the past for this site. This site is clearly one that preserves the existing buildings, the historical buildings, and keeps it looking like an agricultural use as opposed to the uses that had been proposed prior to this one. So I would be supportive of it as well.
Pretty sure I was involved, if not in both of those, at least one of those. So that shows I've been around for a while. But I think what the one wanted to sell antiques, and it was like a antiques mart, and you know, the motel, which, you know, when we talk about a landscape along Lincoln Highway, you know, we could probably slow down the motel view, in my opinion.
And I agree with everything that everyone else said about this being a great project. And I think it meets the ordinance requirements. And I think, you know, it's a great project. I'm not going to repeat what everybody else said, but I agree. And I also gave a lot of value to the Historic Preservation Trust, the letter that was provided on their behalf, because I know they don't take decisions like this lightly regarding historic resources and things like that. So I gave a lot of value to that. So I think, yeah, I think it's a great project.
Any other comments from Planning Commission? Are there other comments from the public? Anybody in the room that has any comments? You would come to the mic.
Hi, I'm David Denlinger. I'm a great grandson of Joseph Espenshade, who built these buildings. And we live in the farm, another Joseph Espenshade farm, just behind this one. So we look at that barn from the back and the house. And I also am the major owner of a 14-acre tract of land just across the road in the Lincoln Highway. It's agricultural land. Our family's wildly enthusiastic about this plan. I think it captures so much of what could be good about East Lampeter Township and Lancaster County. You know, as you drive east from Bridgeport, other than the Amish farm and house, which really doesn't count, I don't think, this would be the first farm that is really visible. And it would be such a showcase, I think, for our township and for the county. And like I said, my sister, my cousins are all wildly enthusiastic about this possibility, and I love to see this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others that wish to comment?
I'm Alvin Engel. I'm a neighbor. I live at 2282 Rockville Road. I go past this property probably a couple times a week, and it is it's such a shame the way that place has been deteriorating. And we have an opportunity here, or the township has an opportunity here, where we have somebody that wants to restore this place and make it attractive again, bring new life into the property. So I am very much in favor of this, and I just hope we don't pass up on an opportunity to have this place restored. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others that wish to make a comment?
Name is Pete Skiatis. We're the closest neighbors to this property, with a small diner to the west of the site here. I think looks like it's going to be a great project. It's something that will add to the township aesthetically, and I think any visitor that is coming by right now sees this as a turn to what they expect to see in Lancaster County right now. With all these improvements that these fellows are going to be doing, I think it's going to be a 1,000% improvement of what's there now. And with the difficulties that this site and buildings have had in the past with approvals for different projects, I think this one should be considered the best use for the site at the present time here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
That's everyone in the room that wishes to speak.
All right, thank you. And I'm assuming there are no email
That
or
is
written.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Any further comment or discussion, or I don't know if Dan is back, if he finished his thoughts?
Now he's muted.
Yeah, maybe if we took the photo down, maybe we can get all the people on, or maybe all of them are on. I'm only seeing myself and 3 others. There we go. And Dan, you're muted. You have to unmute, Dan.
Okay. I don't know how that happened. I was not muted before.
Yeah,
No,
we
I
got frozen. We lost you, so welcome
yeah,
back.
okay. I don't know if you heard my comments earlier, but I think for the summary, I think it's a positive, for the property. I think it's a definite something that we should recommend approval. Are
Any
you
further
looking for a motion or anything, or what?
Well, yeah, I was just, and thank you. I mean, each of us has had an opportunity, and appreciate your comments. I believe I was probably going from the pure standpoint of actual restoration, as opposed to sympathetic, and opening my comment. I said, this would be, from the proposal and the pictures, an improvement to the site. I'm just trying to understand, how it fits in the agricultural, the rural zone, and my perspective. So, but I appreciate each of you offering your comments. And with that, if there's no further comments to be offered, I'll look for a motion on the conditional use application, and a recommendation for the supervisors.
I can make a motion. in application number 2021-09, the conditional use application for 2601 Lincoln Highway East, I move that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the conditional use application with the one condition that all construction equipment, vehicles, and materials are stored in the interior of the buildings.
Second.
So we have the motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, excuse me. Oh,
That was an
okay. Acknowledge and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? All right, thank you.
Thank you, members of the planning commission.
And thank you for your presentation. Okay. Next item is the Ames Reese 2575.
Yeah, can you give us just a second here?
Yeah, I was going to say I'm collecting my papers as well, and we'll let the So are we good in the meeting room?
I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. So our next item is the Ames Reese 2575 Old Philly Pike waiver of land development.
Right, and I don't believe that anyone's on the call for this. So I will just let you know that in 2016, Ames Reese came in for a temporary waiver of land development for a tractor trailer container as storage at the front of their building. And that was a temporary waiver due to the fact that they were moving through the land development process to expand the building and manufacturing on site significantly. That process then did fall to the wayside. However, this container has been fully utilized and incorporated into their systems and storage. It also has all commercial inspections that were required. Their time limit is up, and their time limit was actually up during the COVID period, and we recognized it. They came in and said, we're going to ask for a permanent waiver of this storage container. That's where we're at.
Okay, thank you, Tara. We do have a planning review by the township, and that was prepared in reference to this item. Tara's pretty much covered the narrative and the prior actions by the township. The Section 3 planning review has a recommendation. And based on the zoning and stormwater and additional instructions, that things are all in order and nothing's really changing. So this building has recommended that the waiver of land development be conditionally approved. And the condition of approval may be that any further action on the property will require a full land development plan. And in the previous actions, they were granted other waivers for minor improvements to the site 2 or 3 times.
That's correct.
And so at some point, if they make more improvements, at some point, we probably need to see a full land development plan as recommended here for our review to just get clarity on everything that's been added to the site, as well as anything new that might be proposed. They previously, a few years ago, had some significant improvements they were looking at, and due to some, I think it was even prior to COVID, some issues that ceased that movement forward. Sarah Artera briefly mentioned that, and but they have come in here to do the right thing and make this temporary a permanent. So, any discussion?
I only have one comment, is that this was approved back in November of 2016, and 20 months would have fallen into 2018, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
That is correct. However, we did allow them to proceed with the waiver as long as they were in the land development process.
Okay, I just wanted, yeah, I know we've run into this before on like the church up, it's the Church of Nazarene on New Holland Pike, where they put that addition on the back, and it just kind of, it never came back in, it just stayed there. And I think it's still there, but maybe we've, and I can't remember the history on this anymore. Did we give a final approval on that, or they passed their temporary approval on that? I just wanted to make sure that we're following up on these temporary things that we allow, and they don't slip through the cracks.
Yeah,
Well, that's-
Sarah, that was my question, I guess, to Dan's point. So this is an approval to allow them to retain the storage container until such time as they would move to build something, and then they would be required to remove the storage container?
They're asking for it to remain on the property permanently.
Permanently. Okay.
And my understanding is that it is a permanent structure that was for temporary use, as opposed to being a very temporary structure for temporary use. And they have made improvements. It's not something that is not going to last or is going to deteriorate because it was only intended to be there 20 months or 3 years or something of that nature. So if that helps, Randy, with
yeah, it does.
With your question, that it does have a life to it beyond temporary, because it is a, if you will, a permanent structure. But originally it was just for a temporary use, because their land development plan was for considerably more improvements to the site. And as Tara referenced, the township allowed them to continue this as they were working through a number of issues related to the land development that they were proposing, which then did fall through. So in a sense, they're coming in and doing the right thing now and saying, we had a temporary use, it's expired. How do we fix this? And this is their effort to fix that. And in part to your question, Dan, I'm not sure who initiated the question first, but there's been dialogue with them, as I understand. So this one's going on the right path.
The question.
Any more questions or discussion? If not, we'll look for a motion on the waiver of land development for this project.
I'll make a motion that Plan 2021-11 Ames Reese, care of Henry Trouble, 2575 Old Philadelphia Pike, waiver of land development be approved as per town, or the East Lampeter Township staff review.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Roger has the second. Any discussion on the motion? Not? All those in favor? Aye, and raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. 5 ayes, thus no nays or abstaining, so thank you. Next item would be a briefing item on a rezoning request for 2257 Old Philly Pike. Is there anybody present in regards to this request?
Yes.
Yes, members of the Planning Commission, it's Matt Cream again. I'm
well,
here
excuse me.
representing the
Matt,
petitioner.
Matt, I was just asking if anybody was present on the briefing item. Generally, this is just an indication that for the Planning Commission that this will be on a future agenda, and we would.
Completely understood, Mr. Chairman. I just didn't want to sit quietly and not let you know I was here.
Well, thank you.
So this is property known as Locust Grove School as part of Lancaster Mennonite Schools. 2257 Old Philadelphia Pike, requesting rezoning from R2 medium residential district to the I1, which is the light industrial zoning district. It's multiple properties that no one would really know are multiple properties over there. They all function as a school as a whole with soccer fields and the school property together. So as Daryl indicated, that will come to you at your May 11th meeting. And then the hearing is scheduled for June 7th at 5:30 before the Board of Supervisors.
And this is just for the rezoning portion, not anything related to the potential reuse.
That's correct. This is just the rezoning.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for the briefing item. Is there any other business?
I do have one other briefing item to add tonight, and that is 441 Mount Sydney Road. It came in as a lot add-on plan. If you all are familiar with that property, that is the former Red Rose Retreat. It used to be a country store, a photography studio. It's had a number of uses on the property. It was most recently a bed and breakfast. The property owner is looking to take property from the lot that fronts on both Mount Sydney and Southview and add it to then the northern lot that fronts solely on Mount Sydney and include a driveway access to Southview directly adjacent to the fire company access that is for Whitmer Fire Company. At this point, there are a few issues with the application, so I will not tell you that this will be at your May meeting. It may be at a future meeting.
Hey, thank you. Any other briefing items or other business?
I have no other briefing items.
I just wanted to bring something up. I don't know if people saw the Township News, the one dated March 2021. There was a good thing on solar farming in there and about, zoning for that, or what's our zoning ordinance? How's it address solar farming, and should we be looking at that? That's a question for Tara.
There are alternative energies within the zoning ordinance that are permitted in various areas, Dan, and some are permitted as principal uses and some are permitted as accessory uses. They are under section 23050 as alternative energy facilities.
Okay, I just this article is pretty good, and some townships are seeing major solar farms. I mean, 500,000 acres solar farms. I don't know if we have any ground that would handle that, something like that. Some people are very positive about it, and some people are very negative about it. And something that whether we need to address it before we are presented with something on that. Just something to look at, possibly from the supervisor's standpoint.
Any other business? I just
to
have,
follow through with that, Dan, any principal use of it as an alternative energy would require conditional use. Accessory, like if you want to put, a solar panel on your roof to heat your hot water, that's allowed by right. But anything of a large scale nature, like you're suggesting, or was in that article, would require a conditional use.
Okay.
any more? Announcements is the last, and I think we all got the announcement of Tara as the Assistant Township Manager. I think I got her title right when I introduced her this evening at the beginning of the meeting. I didn't include everything as Assistant Township Manager, Director of Planning and Zoning, and staff of all trades. But congratulations, Tara, on becoming the Assistant Township Manager.
Daryl, but it doesn't take effect until June 1st.
Well,
I don't believe that.
Yeah, that's what I say.
The work started, but the pay hasn't. Okay.
Well, and I guess at the June meeting, I'll have to repeat this again. But on your announcement of it, that, yeah, June 1st, but thank you. And as
No, I was
efficient
just-
as you are, you were quick to correct me on being too soon.
Daryl, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to let the Planning Commission know that we are in the process of looking for a new Director of Planning Zoning Officer. So that process has started. So we hope to fill that spot before June 1st. But if we can't, then shortly after June 1st.
Okay. And we were to have two individuals from the Lancaster County Planning Department here this evening. If you recall, we were advised, I think, last month of that, but because of the items on the agenda tonight, knowing that they were going to take some time, we've deferred that until next month. And we have two individuals that are now working with the township. One, seeing our township has some more urban areas in the western part, I'd say we have an individual with the planning department for that area, and then one that's with more focused on the rural areas of the township and their expertise in that area. So they should be joining us presumably by Zoom next meeting, and will introduce themselves and share with us their roles. So look forward to having them next month. With that, I don't believe there's anything further.
Can I mention one more thing?
Oh, sure.
You're probably all aware of this, and I know your time is precious, but tomorrow evening, there is the virtual open house for the Bridgeport Mobility Plan. So if you're able to participate in that, that would be wonderful.
Okay. And I'm sure the urban representative from the county planning department, I forget his name offhand, but he'll probably be on that as well. So we might hear from him then if you have the opportunity to join in on that Zoom. Anything further? If not, we have one last item, and that's adjournment. So do we have a motion?
So moved.
Sarah, thank you. Second, Randy, all those in favor? Thank you this evening for your comments and discussions. Good evening.
Thanks.